Alright, hello everybody. It is, story time. I have a whole bunch of books I need to read. We'll see how many I get through. I have to start with the quest books, which are, oh, this is gonna be interesting. Night of Tears, and then I'll just go through them in order, and I'll try not to read series if I don't have all of them. And let me know. Night of Tears. Night of Tears by Draenor Saleth. Saralath holds a prominent place in Skyrim history, even if most do not remember it by name. It is, of course, the site of one of the first major Nord settlements, one of the first cities of men in Skyrim, and the earliest known capital of their civilization. It was also the site of terrible bloodshed, when the elves attempted to drive the Nords out of Skyrim, to succeed only in incurring their wrath in the forms of Vaskamor and his fabled 500 companions, who swept the elves from Skyrim and firmly established it as the home of the Nords. All this is known, but little else. What happened on that Night of Tears, when Saralath was razed to the ground? What provoked the elves to such a deliberate, vicious attack, and what prompted such a severe response from the Nords? Vingalmo's trusty treatise on the Ultimate Antecedent suggests that the elves of the Meritech era, along with their counterpart, the early Dwemer, possessed a degree of sophistication unparalleled in Tamriel. They discovered power beyond what could be expected of the time. While a distinct explanation is not given for this, I believe that this work, compared with the early writings of Hespath Cheeriness, suggests that something greater was at work that night in Saralath. The true motives behind the Night of Tears may have been... other way. Might have been obscured to us by the passage of time. But I believe this was not a simple war of territory or of control of Skyrim. I believe that what happened was a significant event based around something very particular. The Nords found something when they built their city, buried deep in the ground. They attempted to keep it buried, but the elves learned of it and coveted it for themselves. Thus they assaulted Saralath, their goal not to drive the Nords out, but to secure this power for themselves. I believe Vaskamar knew something of what the elves would find under Sarathal, and rallied together his people to keep the elves from gaining it. When Nords once again controlled Skyrim, this power was buried deep below the earth and sealed away. Time has kept this knowledge from us, but it is my hope that time will also reveal the truth of these words. Every effort will be made to relocate Saralath to find that which has been lost to us. Escape. I'll just delete Night of Tears. I'm keeping track of which books I have to read. The file's only, 7 or 8 pages long. Night of Tears. Spook. Alright, next is The Last King of the Aliens. Okay, good, you can't see my mouse. The Last King of the Aliens by Herminia Scientina. The Aliens, or Heartland High Elves, ruled Cyrodiil in the long ages of myth before the beginning of recorded history. One of the earliest recorded dates, in fact, is the fall of White Gold Tower in First Era 243, which is commonly assumed to mark the end of the Aliens. Although alien rule over all of Cyrodiil was indeed broken in First Edition 243, or First Era 243, this was only one of the most obvious stages near the end of a long decline. The first 2 centuries of the First Era saw increasing strife between the great alien lords of Cyrodiil. Alesia appears to have taken advantage of a period of civil war to launch her uprising. Imperial historians had traditionally attributed her victory to intervention from Skyrim, but it appears that she had at least as much help from rebel Ayleid lords during the siege of White Gold Tower. The popular image of the Ayleids as brutal slave masters is based in fact, of course, but it is well less known. Oh, it's based in fact, of course. But it is less well known that a number of Ayleid princes continued to rule parts of Cyrodiil after 243, as vassals of the new Empress of Cyrodiil. This suggests either that Ayleid rule was not universally detested, or that Alyssa and her successors were more pragmatic than is traditionally believed, or perhaps some of both. In any event, excavations at a number of Ayleid sites show continued occupation, and even expansion during the so-called Late Ayleid period, First Era 243 to Kama? I don't know what that means, 498. At first, many Ayleid lords continued to rule as vassals of the new human regime. In some cases, Ayleid supporters of Alyssa were even rewarded with new lands taken from slain enemies. It is not clear to what extent human slavery continued under the Cyrodiilic Empire. Humans continued to dwell in the Ayleid-ruled areas of Cyrodiil, but there was nothing definitive to show what that meant, under what terms. This was an uneasy relationship from the beginning, and was not destined to last long. Resentment at the continued presence of the Ayleid nobles within the Empire was a contributing factor to the rise of the so-called Elysian Order founded by Murk. The first victims of the Elysians were the Ayleids of Cyrodiil. In the early 300s, the surviving Ayleid communities in human-ruled areas were obliterated one by one, the refugees temporarily swelling the power of the remaining Ayleid lordships. Then, in 361, the Elysians gained control of the empire and enforced the Elysian doctrines throughout its domain. The Ayleid lordships were abolished. Enforcement of this decree does not appear to have required much direct violence. It seems that by this point, the balance of power was so overwhelming against them, and their fate was so long foreshadowed, that most of the remaining Ayleids simply left Cyrodiil, eventually being absorbed into the elven populations of Valenwood and High Rock. Indeed, the rise of Dyreni homogeny may be linked to this exodus of Ayleids from Cyrodiil, a connection so far little studied by historians. Still, a remnant of Ayleid population seems to have survived the rule of Elysians, because we hear of the last king of the Ayleids joining the Battle of Glenumbria Moors, where the Dyrenes decisively defeated the Elysians in 482. How this king's people survived the preceding century is unknown. We do not even know who they were, although recent research points to Nanalata as the possible resting place of this last king. Unfortunately, in the current state of the empire, funds are no longer available for proper scientific investigation of such extensive ruins, so the answer to these questions will have to be left to future generations. Doop. Doop, doop. The last king of the Ayleids. Boop. Control S. And the next one is Fragments on Artaeum. Artaeum? Some of these are, yes. On Artaeum by Tas-Il Ansalam and Selma. The Isle of Artaeum is the third largest island of the Somerset archipelago, located south of the Morandunan village of Potansa and west of the mainland village of Runesabay. It is best known for being home to the Sigic Order, perhaps the oldest monastic group of Tamriel. The oldest written record of Sigics is from the 20th year of the First Era and tells the tale of the renowned Breton sage and author Vornet traveling to the Isle of Artaeum to meet with Ichesi, the right master of the Sigics. Even then, the Psijics were the counselors of kings and proponents of the Elder Way, taught to them by the original race that inhabit Tamriel. The Elder Way is a philosophy of meditation and study that is said to bind the forces of nature to the individual will. It differs from magic in origin, but the effects are much the same. That said, it is perhaps more than coincidence that the Isle of Artaeum literally vanished from the shores of Somerset at the beginning of the Second Era, at about the time of the founding of the Mages Guild in Tamriel. Various historians and scholars have published theories about this, but perhaps none but Aetius and his own could shed light on the matter. 500 years passed, and Artaeum had returned. The Psijics in the Isle consisted of persons, mostly elves, who had disappeared and were presumed dead in the Second Era. They could not and would not offer any explanation for Artaeum's whereabouts during that time, or the fate of Aetius and the original council of Artaeum. Currently, the Psijics are led by the lore master Solaris, who had presided over the Council of Artaeum for the last 250 years. The council's influence in Tamriel politics is tidal. The kings of Somerset, particularly those of Moradun, have often sought the Psijics' opinion. Emperor Uriel V was much influenced by the council in the early, most glorious parts of his reign, before his disastrous attack on Akavir. It has even been suggested that the fleet of King Orgum of Findonia was destroyed by a joint effort of Emperor Antiochus and the Psijic Order. The last four emperors, Uriel VI, Morahatha, Pelagius IV, and Uriel VII, have been suspicious of the Psijic, enough to refuse ambassadors from the Isle of Artaeum within the imperial city. The Isle of Artaeum is difficult to chart geographically. It is said that it shifts continuously, either at random or by decree of the council. Visitors to the island are so rare as to be almost unheard of. Anyone desirous of meeting with the Psijic may find contacts in Potenza and Runakabe, as well as many of the kingdoms of Somerset. Were it more accessible, Artaeum would be a favored destination for travelers. I have been to the Isle once, and still dream of its idyllic orchards and clear pastures, its still and silent lagoons, its misty woodlands, and the unique Psijic architecture that seems to be as natural as its surrounding, as well as wondrous in its own right. The Sephora Tower, in particular, I would study, for it is a relic for a civilization that predates the High Elves by several hundred years, and it's still used in certain rites by the Psijics. Perhaps one day I might return. Note, the author is currently on the Isle of Artaeum by gracious consent of Master Sarajamus of the Council of Artaeum. And that's how it ends. I need to read those first because those are quest books I want to hand in, and they disappear when you hand them in. So that's a problem. Alright, what should I read next? Horcrux. No. Let's just start alphabetically, I guess. Alright. Nope. Get back in your inventory, Splunts. Dance of Fire version 3. Okay, that's not going to work. How about A Dream of Sovngarde? Do I have to read that? Where'd my mouse go? Where did my mouse go? Oh, Skyrim. Why did you have to be a port? Ports never work out, people. Because you're always like, oh god. Where'd my mouse go? Whatever. I'll do it without. Yes, I do need A Dream of Sovngarde. Alright, well, let's just read A Dream of Sovngarde. Why are there two? Nope. A Dream of Sovngarde. In a few hours, I will likely be dead. My men and I, Nords of Skyrim, will soon join the Emperor's legion to attack the Imperial City. The Aldemari are entrenched within, and our losses will be severe. It is a desperate gambit, for if we do not reclaim the city, we will lose the war. Last night I prayed to mighty Talos for courage and strength in the battle to come. In these last cold hours before the sun rises, I sit down to write this account of a dream I had not long after. I believe this dream was the answer to my prayers, and I would pass along the wisdom it contained to my kinsmen for the battles they will fight in the years after my passing. In the dream, I walked through the mist towards the sound of laughter, merriment, and the songs of the north. The mist soon cleared, and before me lay a great chasm. Waters thundered over its brim, and so deep it was I could not see the bottom. A great bridge made all of whalebone was the only means to cross, and so I took it. It was a few steps onto the bridge that I encountered a warrior, grim and strong. "I am Soon, Master of Trials," he said to me, his voice booming and echoing upon the walls of the high mountains all around us, not featured in this recording. With a wave, he bade me pass on. I knew in my heart that I was granted passage only because I was a visitor. Should the hour come when I return here after my mortal life, the legends say that I must best this dread warrior in single combat. Beyond the bridge, a great stone longhouse rose up before me, so tall as to nearly touch the clouds. Though it took all my strength, I pushed open the towering oaken door and beheld the torchlit feast hall. Here were assembled the greatest heroes of the Nords, all drinking mead poured from great kegs and singing battle songs. Suckling pigs turned on a long iron spit over my roasting fire. My mouth watered at the smell of roast meat, and my heart was glad to hear the songs of old. "Come forth," cried a hoary man who sat upon a high wooden chair. This I know to be Vaskramor, father of Skyrim and the Nords. I approached and knelt before him. "You find yourself in Sovngarde, Hall of the Undead. Now what would you have of me, son of the North?" he bellowed. "I seek counsel," said I, "for tomorrow we fight a desperate battle, and my heart is full of fear." Vraskamor raised his tankard to his lips and drank until the cup was empty. Then he spoke once more. "Remember this always, son of the North. A Nord is not judged by the manner in which he lived, by the manner in which he died." With that, he cast aside his flagon, raised his fist in the air, and roared a great cheer. The other heroes rose to their feet and cheered in answer. The sound still rang in my ears when I awoke, and I gathered my men and told them of my vision. The words seemed to fill their hearts with courage. "The horns are blowing, and the banners are raised. The time has come to muster. May Talos grant us victory this day, and if I am found worthy, may I once again look upon that graced feast hall." Skyrim, Free Winter. Ow, my throat. A hypothetical treachery. Do I have a mouse yet? I do not have a mouse. How do I get my mouse back? Oh, I found it. That was a dream of Stomach. I do need hypothetical treachery. No. Sorry. A hypothetical treachery, a one-act play by Anthel Morvir. Dramatis personage: Malvisian, a high elf battle mage; Inzolia, a dark elf battle mage; Dulcetus, a cyrodiil healer; Shivus, an Argonian barbarian; a ghost; some bandits. Scene: Elvenwood. As the curtain rises, we see the misty labyrinthian landscape of the legendary elven grove of Valenwood. All around we hear wolves howling. A bloodied reptilian figure, Shivius breaks through the branches of the trees and surveys the area. Shivius, it's clear. Inzolia, a beautiful dark elf mage, climbs down from the tree, helped by the barbarian. There is the sound of footsteps nearby. Shivius readies his sword, and Inzolia prepares to cast a spell. Nothing comes out. Inzolia, you're bleeding. You should have Dulcetius heal that for you. Shivius, he's still drained from all the spells he had to cast down in the caves. I'm fine. If we don't get out of this and no one needs it more, I'll take the last potion of healing. Where's Malvisian? Malvisian, a high elf battle mage, and Dulcetus, a Cyrodiil healer, emerge from the tree, carrying a heavy chest between the two of them. They awkwardly try to get down from the tree, carrying their loot. Malvasian, here I am, though why I am carrying the heavy load is beyond me. I always thought that the advantage of dungeon delving with a great barbarian was that he carried the loot. Shivius, if I carry that, my hands would be too full to fight. And tell me if I am wrong, but not one of the three of you has enough magicka reserved to make it out of here alive. Not after you electrified and blasted all those homunculuses down below ground. Dulcetius, homunculi. Shivius, don't worry. I'm not going to do what you think I'm going to do. Idzolius innocently. What's that? Shivius. Shiavis? Kill you all and take the ebony mail for myself? Admit it, you thought I had that in mind. Dulcetus, what a perfectly horrible thought. I never thought anyone, no matter how vile and degenerate. Inzolia, why not? Malvasian, he needs porters, like he said. He can't carry the chest and fight off the inhabitants of Eldengrove both. Dulcetus, bystander of all the mean, conniving typically Argonian. Inzolia, and why do you need me alive? Shivis, I don't necessarily, except that you're prettier than the other two, for a smooth skin, that is. And if something might come after us, it might go for you first. There is a noise in some bushes. Shivis, go check that out. Inzolia, it's probably a wolf. These woods are filled with them. You check it out. Shivis, you have a choice, Inzolia. Go and you might live. Stay here and you definitely won't. Inzolia considers, and then goes to the bushes. Shivis, to Malvasian and Dulcetus. The king of Sylvanar will pay good money for the mail, and we can divide it more nicely between 3 than 4. Inzolia, you're so right. How long is this? Oh dear God. And alright, I guess so. Yeah, alright. I'm gonna stop saying their names. You're so right. Inzolia suddenly levitates up to the top of the stage. A semi-transparent ghost appears from the bush and rushes to the next person, who happens to be Shivis. As the barbarian screams and thrashes at it with his sword, it levels blasts of whirling gas at him. He crumbles to the ground. It turns next to Dulcetius, the healer, and as the ghost focuses its festering chill on the helpless Dulcetus, Malvasin casts a ball of flame at it that causes it to vaporize into the misty air. Inzolia floats back down to the ground as Malvasin examines the bodies of Dulcetus and Shiavis, who are both white-faced from the draining power of the ghost. You had some magicka reserved, after all. So did you. Are they dead? Malvasin takes the potion of healing from Dulcetus' pack. Yes. Fortunately, the potion of healing wasn't broken when they fell. Well, I guess this leaves just the two of us to collect the reward. We can't get out of this place without each other, like it or not. The two battle mages pick up the chest and begin plodding carefully through the undergrowth, pausing from time to time at the sounds of footsteps or other eerie noises. Let me make sure I understand. You have a little bit of magicka left, so you elected to use it to make Shivas the ghost's target, forcing me to use most of my limited reserve to destroy the creature, so I wouldn't be more powerful than you. That's first-rate thinking. Thank you. It's only logical. Do you have enough power to cast any other spells? Naturally. An experienced battle mage always knows a few minor but highly effective spells for such a trial. I take it you, too, have a few tricks up your sleeve. Of course, like you said. They pause for a moment before continuing, as a fearful wail pierces the air. When it dies away, they slowly trudge on. Just as an intellectual exercise, I wonder, what spell you would cast at me if I made it out of here without any more combat? I hope you're not implying that I would dream of killing you, so I would keep the treasure all to myself. Of course not, nor would I do that to you. It's merely an intellectual exercise. Well, in that case, purely as an intellectual exercise, I would probably cast a leech spell on you, to take away your life force and heal myself. After all, there are brigands on the road between here and Sylvanar, and a wounded battle mage with a valuable artifact would make a tempting target. I'd hate to survive Eldengrove merely to die in the open. That's a well-reasoned response. As for myself, again, not saying I would ever do this, but I think a simple, sudden, electric bolt would serve my purposes admirably. I agree about the danger of brigands, but don't forget, we also have a potion of healing. I could easily slay you and heal myself to full capacity. Very true. It would end up a question then of whose spell was more effective at that instant. If our spells counteracted one another, and I leached your life energy only to be crippled by your lightning bolt, then we could both be killed. Or so near death that a mere potion of healing would scarcely help either one of us. Let alone both. How ironic it would be if two scheming battle mages, not saying we are scheming, but for the purposes of this intellectual exercise, were left on the brink of death, completely drained of magicka, with one healing potion to choose from. Who would get it? Logically, whoever drank it first, which in this case would be you, since you're holding it. Now, what if one of us were injured but not killed? Logic would dictate that a scheming battle mage would take the potion, leaving the injured party to the mercy of the elements, I suppose. That does seem most sensible, but suppose that Sorry, people yelling behind me, because they don't understand how socialized talking works. That does seem most sensible, but suppose that battle mages, while certainly scheming types, had a certain respect for one another. Perhaps in that case, the victorious one might, for instance, put the potion up a tree near his or her gravely wounded victim. Then, when the wounded party had enough magicka replenished, he or she would be able to levitate to the tree branches and recover the potion. By that time, the victorious battle mage would have already collected the reward. They pause for a moment at the sound of something in the bushes nearby. Carefully, they climb across the branches of a tree to bypass it. I understand what you're saying, but it seems out of character for our hypothetical scheming battle mage to allow his or her victim to live. Perhaps, but it's been my observation that most scheming battle mage enjoy the feeling of having bested someone in combat, and having that person alive to live with the humiliation. These hypothetical scheming battle mages sound... Daylight! Do you see it? The two scurry across the branches, dropping behind a bush, so we can no longer see them. We can, however, see the shimmering halo of sunlight. Behind the tall bush. We made it. Likewise, behind the tall bush. Indeed. There is a sudden explosion of electrical energy, and a wild howling aura of a red light in the silence. And then silence. After a few moments' pause, we hear someone climbing up the tree. It is Malvasian, putting the potion high up in the bough. He chuckles as he climbs back down as the curtain drops. Epilogue. The curtain rises on a road to Sylvanar. A gang of bandits have surrounded Malvasian, who is propped up on his staff, barely able to stand. They pull his chest away from him with ease. What have we got here? Don't you know it ain't safe out here on the road? All sick like you are? Why don't we help you with your load? Weakly. Please, let me be. Go on, spellcaster. Fight us for it. I can't. Too weak. Suddenly, Inzola flies in, casting lightning bolts from her fingers at the bandits, who quickly scramble away. She lands on the ground and picks up the chest. Malvasian collapses, dying. Hypothetically, what if a battle mage cast a spell on another which didn't harm it once, but drained his life force and his magicka bit by bit, so he wouldn't know the time, but feel confident enough to leave the potion of healing behind? A most treacherous battle mage she'd be. And hypothetical, would she be likely to help her fallen foe, so that she could enjoy the humiliation of him continuing to live? From my experience, hypothetically, no. She doesn't sound like a fool. As Inzolia lugs the chest off towards Sylvanar, and Malvasian expires on the stage, we drop the curtain. So this sounds like it was written by a battle mage who was like, you know what, I'm gonna write a play about the real battle mages. How awesome we are. And at that note, this is a good time for a break because it's been 30 minutes and I need more water because my throat hurts.